Some big news off the top of the show. 5TV1 will be launching the first 6 episodes of the Long Night with Vish Khanna talk show for Bell Media cable subscribers on Monday, May 1st, 2017 on 5TV Channel 1 and Channel 1217 on Bell's 5TV service. We're celebrating the occasion with a launch party at Longboat Hall, 1087 Queen Street West in Toronto on Wednesday, May 3rd between 6 and 8 p.m. Myself, the cast and crew, some of the guests who were on the shows. We recorded the 6 shows at the end of January there. They're all going to be on the show, and I'll be interviewed on stage. Short little interview with Aaliyah Pabani of The Imposter. She's going to talk to me about the talk show. And then in June, we're going to start to circulate episodes of the show on YouTube and Vimeo, wherever we can. And then the audio will also be featured on this podcast. But again, I'd like you to please come to the launch party for the show at Longboat Hall on Wednesday, May 3rd between 6 and 8 p.m. And it's going to be fun. So please, come on out. And, there's an Eventbrite link to reserve free tickets. And more information about that on my website, vishkhanna.com, and also on our show's Facebook page. Okay? Thanks. Come on out. It'll be fun. Long night. It's happening. A TV show. I got a TV show for now. Let's see what happens. A quick word to let you know that if you pledge $10 or more to the Creative Control Patreon page throughout April 2017, you will receive 1 Creative Control t-shirt while supplies last. I have the maroon one with my head on it, and the sort of yellow one with the pizza lettering, and in unisex, small, medium, large, and extra large sizes. So if you'd like to support the show and receive a small, medium, large, or extra large token of my appreciation, visit patreon.com/creativecontrol to view the shirts and pledge $10 or more today. Thanks! Saltland is the moniker of composer and cellist Rebecca Foon, who calls Montreal, Quebec home. A former member of a Silver Mount Zion and currently in the group Esmerine, Foon has just released A Common Truth. Her second album is Saltland. Here's a bit of Under My Skin, the second song on that record.
Your name reminds me when I was young. That boy I knew who had your name stuck in my head, foreshadowing a common dream, sweeping under my skin. Your belief for a brighter road inspires me to work harder and harder. You once told me this script of our lives, how it all
A Common Truth is a lovely, stirring album released by Constellation Records on March 31st, 2017. And Rebecca and I recently had a chat about her yoga practice and mental health, climate change and the actions of people who both acknowledge and deny its impact on Earth, her role in co-organizing the successful and star-studded Pathway to Paris concerts for climate justice, Flea and Warren Ellis, her own music, and much more. Sponsored by Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Fair Trade Certified Organic Coffee, this is Saltland on the 314th episode of Creative Control with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hey, Becky, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm very well. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, thanks.
It seems like it was just yesterday that you and Bruce were on talking about Esmerine.
Right, yeah, totally.
But it was about a year and a half ago or something like that, a year ago, I think.
I know, time makes no sense.
Time makes no sense. So where are you today?
I'm in Montreal.
You're in Montreal now. I thought I heard you moved. Are you still in Montreal?
Yeah, I just live part-time in Montreal, part-time in New York.
What precipitated?
Go back and forth.
You go back and forth. Why are you in New York part of the time?
For music and do some yoga stuff there. I have a yoga studio there with my dear friend Sarah Neufeld.
Oh, okay. And so you run a yoga. You're not going to do yoga. There's yoga in Montreal.
There's yoga in Montreal, and there's yoga in New York.
Right. So you're actually a yoga instructor?
Yeah, I started a yoga studio there with a friend, with Sarah.
With Sarah, who's also been on the show, and I think we've talked about yoga when she was last on the show. So
oh, hilarious! There you go.
Yoga.
Full circle.
Now, yoga. Lots of people do yoga. Lots of people like doing yoga. What brought you to yoga?
Well, I guess we both kind of fell into it for the same reasons, just from being in touring bands, being on the road a lot, and feeling needing some sort of grounding and feeling of general health and well-being and mental health. So yoga was just a nice vehicle for trying to stay healthy on the road and grounded. And we fell in love with it and fell in love with the same kind of yoga practice. And so then we decided to launch something in New York while also bringing together yoga with music and culture. So we do a lot of live music at the studio as well.
You perform for yoga attendees, or who do you perform for?
Yeah, we've done concerts there, but we also do live music during special classes once in a while, like once a month. We'll bring together live music and while a teacher's teaching a class. Wow,
that's interesting. So you're really integrating your worlds.
It's a fun way for us to integrate our worlds, because also, and it's a fun way to try to make yoga more connected to who we are as people.
Yeah.
Because it's fun to kind of push boundaries with what is yoga.
Well, I want to learn more about that, because I think there are some misperceptions about yoga. Yoga is a very physical activity, but it also caters to mental health and relaxation. But I think that some people see it as one or the other, and some people view it as kind of hokey, or and other people live and swear by it.
I thought it was hokey for so long, and it does bring up the issue of mental health, and I think more and more, as this is totally not where I thought we were going to go right away, but more and more as I get older and continue to do music and cultivate a creative practice and try to dive in to find new ideas as a musician, the more I find it almost integral to that practice, and I almost find it like a spiritual practice of finding mental health for myself. And that's kind of a weird word and has weird connotations associated to it, and so does a lot of health practices like yoga like triggers ideas, and for myself it did as well. But I do find like the older I get, I personally need to have more tools in my toolbox of how to maintain like a peacefulness and try. My new MO is to really try to not integrate stress and anxiety. Try to live a stress-free and anxious-free life.
Mm-hmm.
That's also free of negative thoughts. So for me, yoga is a big part of that, and meditation.
Now,
and it's helped me enormously.
I think that there's a perception among some people that musicians or artists have these carefree lives, you know? They're doing something they love, and it's an expression of themselves. And if someone has viewing this from at least somewhat of an even keel perspective, they would say, what a privilege, what an honor it is for these people to be able to do this for a living, for a livelihood, to express themselves. But I think that what I've seen in the last few years is a real outpouring from artists and musicians who are willing to talk about how difficult a life it can be and how stressful a life it can be. Clearly, you relate to this.
Well, definitely. But I think this kind of ties into my new album, because I think the state of the world is also, whether you come from a privileged family and had a beautiful childhood and, don't have too many, like your stress levels, your daily stress levels are quite minimal compared to many other people on this planet. I think when you look, you can't deny that humans on planet Earth are all interconnected. And I think health and wellness and happiness is deeply interconnected to all of us.
Yeah.
Like I just fundamentally believe that. Like I don't think you can have like 10% of the population happy on a spiritual level and 90% not happy, or 1% or 5% or whatever. Like I think that's not happiness. I just don't think that can really work. Like if we're really defining what happiness is.
Yeah.
I think love and equality and justice and democracy, like all of those elements to society are so critical. And so if we look at like planet Earth and happiness and how to get to a happier world, like you cannot deny get to the root of like what's really going on. And I find what's interesting about climate change is that it does, it's a very specific scientific phenomena that's going on planet Earth, but like we are also, it's so deeply connected to so many I would say probably every issue the world is facing. So it's all so interconnected. Everything is so interconnected. And what comes with that is an enormous opportunity to be honest about what's going on and to come up with innovative solutions that could not only keep us in a place of climate safety from now moving forward, so that the planet can survive as we know it in terms of biodiversity and what we know, but also like it's just, it can also but that opportunity can also tap into critical issues that we are facing in this state of emergency, where we're really like looking into our own extinction or facing it. Like we can actually see that path if we don't do anything about it. How long that would be is, a huge question mark, but it is something that we all subconsciously or consciously know about. And so I just think as like an artist or a human even a person on planet Earth, like that information is really intense. It doesn't matter who you are, because we're all connected and we all breathe the air that we breathe. We all experience the oceans. Like there's a bunch of commons on planet Earth that we all share.
Yeah.
And how we have access to those is different based on class and income and privilege, etc. But it still interconnects us all. So it's just I find it a really unique time. And I think art and culture and music have an enormous role to play in terms of tapping into that emotional depth and honesty of what's going on.
Yeah.
And communicating it however one chooses. But it's something we're all facing, which is kind of an interesting thing.
Well, you talked there about commonality, about a collective experience, a collective consciousness. And I mean, you called your record a common truth, and you have been discussing climate change. And from what I understand, and feel free to clarify this, but from what I understand, climate change, the state of the prospect of ecological collapse, that's all informed your record. And I want to ask you more about that, but I do want to land a little bit on this word truth. You've called your record a common truth. It harkens, or for me anyway, it reminds me of the very famous Al Gore documentary, An Inconvenient Truth. There's something about climate change which has divided people about fact and fiction more than almost anything that I can think of. This sense of, I mean, they call it, the people who are opposed to climate change science are called climate change deniers. It's a very pointed designation, and yet in the face of that is now at least two examples that I can think of truth in the face of this. Can you talk about your choice of in incorporating this word truth in this record? Again, forgive me if I've misread the record, but this is my understanding, is that it ties into the things you were just talking about in terms of climate change.
It actually it hits on them exactly. So it hits into this idea of honesty. So the fact that I think a collective consciousness needs to really be awakened if we're gonna solve this problem, this collective problem on planet Earth. That it first of all requires honesty of what's tapping into really what's going on. And so that's where the truth comes in. And then a common truth is coming back to the idea of the commons, so that we are all interconnected on this beautiful planet. And so we are all, it is an interesting problem because we are all connected to the problem. It doesn't matter how rich you are. Like, people face, of course, small islands are experiencing climate change much more dramatically than, say, people in New York City, but New York City is also experiencing it, or had experienced it with Sandy, and we can't run away from it. And so now if you want to go to Mars, you can go to Mars, but it's really happening. Yeah.
So when you sit back and think about why this truth is being denied, what do you come up with? I mean, I think cynically and critically, it's a bottom line situation, people looking at the financial implications of actually doing something to combat what's happening or to acknowledge what's happening. But is that too simple? Like, I gather you've thought a lot about this and the opposition to this notion that something is happening on a man-made level about climate change. But when you, what do you make of people denying it, and what do you think their arguments are? Like, that anything you can wrap your head around. Like, I know a lot of it probably doesn't make sense to you, but can you talk on that a bit?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of it is fear, and climate change is, it's a hard one to wrap your brain around in terms of how to solve the issue. And I think in terms of discussing climate change, even people that believe in climate change and want to help try to use their own life to make an impact towards a more sustainable world, it's hard to really know what to do because it's such an enormous problem. And I think more and more we're realizing it's beyond like changing your light bulbs in your house, or it's just like it requires such an enormous collaborative effort for humanity across the planet to kind of solve together, and that's where the Paris Agreement but in terms of the fear of that, I think there's so many multi-layers, and I don't know enough about human psychology to know like the heavy deniers of like what's really going on there, if it's really just about money or if it's about fear that we are actually going to run out of resources and there just are too many humans on this planet, and so we got to keep it to ourselves because we're in positions of power, like what we see right now going on in the current U.S. administration, or like I don't know, but I do know that there is like just we know the facts of what's going on, and the science is real, and there's a lot of energy being poured into also denying it. So it's a funny one. Humans are weird.
Well, humans are weird, and we've become we're increasingly put in these positions now where we have to, particularly I think since the shock of Donald Trump's election and the fact that his supporters are so steadfast no matter what he says or does, we're in this position where we are, I think, forced to try to comprehend incomprehensible points of view.
Yeah,
weird. It is weird, but I also think that, I mean, put yourself in the position of someone who maybe doesn't have the highest education, and they're hearing that humans control the climate. I'm sure that one of their arguments, I've not read this, but I'm sure one of their arguments would be like, look, if it's raining, I can't control the rain. There's nothing I can do to control whether it's a sunny day or a rainy day or a snowy day. What would you say to someone like that? What would you say to someone like that, Becky?
And I think that just comes back to the point of like, if you are in a position of power or have the capability of influencing or inspiring others, I really do feel that it's almost an obligation at this point to try and make a difference, because we are in such a critical state of emergency. Like right now, I truly believe that we don't have, like some people think presidents or prime ministers, they come and go. So like, but right now, I think the next 4 years are so critical in terms of climate change and really trying to come up with a plan to reduce our global greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah.
And so in terms of people that might not have a very clear understanding of what's going on, where I just really think the educators out there need to do what they can to really talk about solutions and talk about the problems. And for me, the solution is quite clear-cut. In terms of climate change, I really do think it's about cities at this point, and cities coming together to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 80 to 100% by 2050. And if enough of them can get on board, which would require probably 1,000, like it would require a lot of cities. But if there was that kind of commitment, then we could find climate safety and meet the Paris targets.
Are there any cities signed on to that now?
Idea? Well, there's lots of cities right now that are working to reducing their emissions.
Yeah.
And there's a strong dialogue, but I just really think that dialogue needs to push forward.
I mean, you alluded to the fact that education is such a huge part of this, a huge aspect of this situation, and I can't think of a time that I can recall where facts and misinformation and mistrust of what I view as solid information has ever run more rampant. There's all these conspiracy theories, and yet, I can understand certain things falling under right and left political spectrum divides, like I don't even want to get into them. A lot of them seem to be religious-based and misinterpreting the Bible in terms of what socialism is. Like, I could go on and on about this. I have to assume that, like me, you are just completely baffled that something like climate change could become a politicized thing.
No, it's so strange. Like, so I co-founded an organization with my friend Jesse Paris-Smith, and during the Paris agreement, like during the UN climate change conference that took place in Paris, we organized 2 nights of concerts in Paris and that really came out of a desire for something to emerge from the Paris talks.
Yeah.
Because we were both deeply concerned that it would be another Copenhagen or Kyoto, that either nothing would come out of it or that it would die quickly. And so this is where this album actually emerged. Was we worked really hard that year in 2015 to organize these 2 concerts, and so A Common Truth was kind of an expression of that concern. And it's just so crazy now looking back, because it was such a victory. It felt like a victory at the time when the Paris Agreement was established, because I really wasn't sure it was actually that nations of the world were going to come together to establish it. I'm sure many people have different opinions on that, but for me personally, it wasn't like a no-brainer. And it's just so crazy now to see like where we're at, and
yeah, it is.
What a wild world.
Yeah, now you were a principal organizer of these concerts. Who played these concerts?
The ones in Paris.
Yes.
We've organized a bunch of them, but the ones in Paris, I guess the key performers were Tom York and Patti Smith and Flea and Warren Ellis, and myself and Jesse and a beautiful musician Tenzin Chogyal he lives in Australia, but he's from Tibet. Fali Ipupa from France.
So how do you, I know you travel the world, you meet people. How do you get such high caliber people to sign on to such an event? Do you contact them?
Yeah, we contacted them. I think, it's never easy, but the trick is stars aligning in terms of schedules and timing.
Yeah.
And then also something like this, somebody's not going to do it unless they're also deeply worried and concerned, which makes for quite a powerful event if you can pull it together, because that's what we've found, and that's what makes it worth it and why we keep doing it, because the energy is quite powerful when you get incredible musicians and thinkers. Bill McKibben was there, Naomi Klein, Vandana Shiva, they all spoke. When you get those kinds of brains and powerful spiritual channels of music, musicians in the room that deeply care about the state of the world and are genuinely worried and are being very truthful about it.
Yeah.
It's what you can channel in terms of emotional depth is quite powerful.
Yeah.
And that's why I really do believe there's a place for music and art to help channel a movement around solutions to fighting climate change.
Yeah.
I think it's been missing, and I think it's really important. And at the end of the day, like, we just don't have much time. So it's like what I'm connected to try to make a difference. And if it has an impact or not, I don't know. But it's something that I do feel like it's filling a void, and people need meaning in their lives. And it's an opportunity for the people that we can find and talk to and tap into, share the opportunity with. It does feel like there's something there.
I want to ask you a potentially difficult question, and I don't necessarily expect you to be able to answer this, because I've been wrestling with this too. I keep encountering this term echo chamber, this notion of people, just liking a bunch of, like when you have your social media feed or whatever, you're curating your feed, it's you and your friends, and you're all liking the same posts or sharing the same information. And in some cases, you feel like you've accomplished something by doing that and spreading the word about something good. And I'm not trying to criticize that, but I can recall.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah, I can recall watching Barack Obama doing stump speeches for Hillary Clinton and rallying their base. And I couldn't help but wonder what it would be like if Barack Obama was like, you know what, I'm actually going to go to like a Trump thing, or I'm going to go to a Republican a stronghold and try to talk to those people, because those are the people whose minds you want to change. I guess what I'm talking about is mind changing. You've got Patti Smith and Tom York and those and yourselves, and that's great. I mean, and I'm sure it felt like a very joyous, significant event, but the people that would attend such an event aren't the ones you need to convert necessarily. You know what I mean?
Right. But it's funny. I agree with you, but I think so so that was 2015 and December 2015, and at the time I actually do who knows if we helped make the Paris Agreement happen or not, but it was sketchy times. There was those attacks at the Bataclan that just happened. 2.5 weeks before our concert, and there were no concerts happening. The city of Paris was canceling every event. We were the only cultural event that happened in Paris during the UN climate change talks. And the fact that all those artists still came, so many tours got canceled. Prince canceled his tour at the time. There was so much fear going on at that time that I think I totally agree with you, but I do think those specific concerts were a bit of a historical moment, which might sound crazy at that time, during those UN talks and the politics that were going on, it just felt like that energy was really important at that time in that city. And if it happened again, I don't know if I can see exactly what you're saying, that how helpful is this really? But now we're in a very different situation with Trump. And and even Trudeau with pipelines going, getting green lights. It's a very different situation now. And so now I think, first of all, what I liked about what we did with Paris, and I didn't know, because it was so much work, and it's God, if you put all this work into something that's making zero impact, so it's so depressing. And it doesn't make you want to continue to do it. But what makes me, and I really care about those metrics. I don't want to be putting my one and only life into energy that feels like it's not doing anything, and that it just looks cool because it's involving cool people. To me, that's not interesting. And so, and also, I don't want to waste people's time. I don't want to bring Tom York involved into something if it's not doing anything for the world. You know what I mean? But
I just want to clarify something. I'm not trying to negate the efficacy of what you've done or what people are doing, or try to suggest that pressure and protest aren't effective. I guess all I'm saying is, I guess I'm expressing my own impatience with my inability to convince people that are totally different from who have a different view of things to come around.
And I guess for me, in a way, I see it as action. And so if someone is completely against something or completely for it, in a way, it's almost like you have to spin it on its head. If you look at someone like Elon Musk, he's creating really innovative technology, but he's a Trump supporter. And if I had the money, I would buy a Tesla. Why not? But he's a Trump supporter. There's it's a weird twist, who is this guy? And so, for me, the next step with what I think maybe I want to focus my energy on is with continuing to create the art that I create, the music that I create, and with the organizational work that I do. For me, it's about solutions at this point. And I think with solutions, the solutions can bring in all different types of philosophies. So even the climate deniers, because it brings in economics. And so the climate deniers might buy a Tesla, or I'm not saying that's a very kind of weird comment, but there's I think that I just think at this point we're so in the red light that we need to come up with we really need to come up with how to get off of greenhouse gas emissions ASAP. And within that, there's a huge opportunity to weave in social justice and equity, build a society, build a world that's rooted in the ethics that we care about, that creates a healthy, mentally healthy, sustainable world. Coming back to mental health. But anyway, so I really think that we can, I really do think we can do it, and do it through solutions, and do it through building cities that are exciting to live in, that are not dependent on greenhouse gas emissions. And I think it can bring in all types of people.
Well, I agree with you, and I appreciate your optimism, and I hope that these things come to pass. You mentioned the music making that you have been doing, and I want to ask about, we've talked a lot about A Common Truth in a kind of roundabout way, but I want to ask you about the actual record itself, because my understanding is you really wanted to focus the sound on the cello and also your voice. Can you talk about Saltland and exactly your conception of this? I know we've talked about we talked about Esmerine, and I know you from playing in the Silver Mount Zion way back when. I kind of know your trajectory a little bit, but can you explain Saltland and its conception and how this record may have maybe an extension of what you've been working on?
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. So Saltland emerged, I guess the first album came out in 2013, and it came out of a desire for me to explore what I could create from the cello as a root of building songs. So within that, I was exploring looping melodies and then trying to sing over top of them. And I was curious about writing lyrics, and because all the stuff that we're talking about just has been so much a part of my inner dialogue. I needed other ways to kind of tap into creative, because in a way, like, music is also like a therapy for me, a channel. It's like a creative channel of expression that can take me to another place, which is really, I look for that a lot in life, and it's really fulfilling. And so for me to be able to kind of, with all the admin work that I do as well in life, like, it's nice to be able to tap into all these issues in a way that's so integrating lyrics was kind of an interesting challenge to try to build some songs from all of these ideas. And so that's where it came from. So the first album was also very much tied into climate change, but also just and thinking about a sustainable future and what that means in green cities. But it was less of a, I guess I wasn't, now I definitely feel a call of emergency, whereas then I didn't feel that so strongly. I felt a real desire to work towards creating more resilient, beautiful cities, green cities. Right. So this album, the first album I'd never sung before on my own. I did a lot of group singing with Silver Mount Zion. Yeah. But I'd never sung on my own, and I never really knew what my voice sounded like, which is kind of weird. And I didn't really know what it was like to like write lyrics and sing lyrics. So I didn't really know if I could do it or not, but I did have this desire to try. And so I made the album that I made, and then for this album, I really wanted to strip it down and build songs that were very much just cello and voice, so that I could not only play them live and not have to, like, I was very interested in creating a very intimate record that I could just play solo. Yeah.
Was it the Silver Mount Zion group singing that prompted you to start singing publicly?
Yeah, I never sung before that.
Huh. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been immersed in music for how long in your life?
It's funny, and forever, since I was a kid. But I was always I'm a pretty shy person, and I never, singing, it taps into like a different feeling that kind of scared me, I think. And so, and that's also why I wanted to start singing, was just on an emotional level, like, break down some fears around it. Yeah. But then I found something that I connected with, which is so beautiful to find.
No, it's lovely. I mean, and the singing, the way it's mixed is sort of interesting. The vocals become almost an instrument. They blend into, for the most part anyway, they blend into the instrumentation quite a bit. It's that was intentional, or?
Yeah, it's intentional, but it's funny, those lyrics are, I should probably put them on my website or something, because they're all so connected to climate change. Yeah. And so, and I know they're hard to pick out a little bit.
I wondered about that, because it did seem like you had a really purposeful intent with these lyrics, and the ones I can pick out, I can hear that, but I mean, without the context, first of all, without knowing you the way I do already, and knowing what your interests are, and getting a sense of the record by its artwork and by even some of the titles, I could tell where you were coming from. But at the same time, listening to the to the songs, it's a little murkier.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that's just an aesthetic decision on your part.
Yeah, with Jace as well. Jace from Break Classes, who worked with me on the album very closely, and we have a pretty wonderful relationship in the studio together. I fully trust him, and so that's kind of where we landed.
Yeah, I want to ask about Jace. So Jace Lasik is, as you mentioned, he runs a studio called Break Glass. He's a member of the band the Besnard Lakes. Another collaborator on this record is Warren Ellis of the Dirty Three, and he plays with Nick Cave and other people. Talk about those two. I mean, you mentioned Jace there. Is there anything? Actually, yeah. Tell me about it. I love
Jace. That's all I have to say. I adore him. And I honestly, I wouldn't be where I am today, like making these two records, without him, because I feel very safe with him, and I really trust him. And so it allows me to discover new things in myself, because I think it's important to have, like when you're recording or doing something really intimate that's scary.
Yeah.
You can find powerful things, but it's scary, and so to have like feel like really in a safe little world is where you can find that. And Jace and I just really feel safe with him, and I love his creative ideas, and we build off of each other. He really listens to mine, I really listen to him, and it's just like, it's a real pleasure to work with him. He's such a wonderful person, and he's so creative and such a sweetheart. I just really think Montreal's lucky to have him.
You know, externally, you've been on Constellation Records for a long time. Constellation headquarters is above the Hotel to Tango studio, which a lot of people use. I will say I was a little surprised when I discovered that you'd made the record outside of that studio. It just seems to be an HQ for so many artists who put out records on the label. Yeah,
and I've done lots of records there.
Of course, yeah.
I over the years, I've just developed this relationship with Jason, so it's just been wonderful working with him.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, I don't want to forget about Warren.
Yes.
Warren is a giant among music fans, and it's not insignificant that you have him on your record. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, he's also a very dear friend, and Warren, it's so funny. Like, I had asked him to play for the Paris show, those two Paris shows, and he wasn't. I don't think he was sure if he could do it or not because of touring.
Yeah.
And so never committed, and then Flea asked last minute, because Flea asked if he could do a solo set at that show, and then we're like, a solo set, awesome, okay. And then he at the last minute was like, oh, my friend Warren is going to play, so we need to get an Ampeg for him. And I was like, Warren? And he's like, yeah, Warren Ellis. And I was like, Warren's going to play with you at your solo set? Anyway, so then I was like, great, okay. And so Warren played those two shows, and so we reconnected. And so and those shows were pretty like monumental for, I think, everyone involved. And so, in different ways, and so that's like, so it was just really nice to share that experience together. And then, especially because this album was written basically up to that point,
right,
and was very much a reflection of that time. And so when I asked him if he wanted to be a part of this, it was just so wonderful. And I'm also like a big fan of Nick and Warren's soundtrack work.
Yep.
And what I truly love about what they do is, which I think is very unique, is that I really feel like an emotional depth with what, and also commitment, I guess you could say, in terms of what they want to accomplish when they write and what they execute. Like, I really do think they're trying to move hearts.
Yeah.
And more, to be honest, I find that hard to find. Like, when I go online and look at Pitchfork or whatever it is and see music coming out, like I want my heart to be moved with music, and I want to feel things, and especially with what's going on with right now with the state of the world, like I don't want to, I want to move away from a feeling of emptiness to like really feeling things, and maybe that's kind of a wild thing to say, but I do feel that they do that. And so I was very much honored to work with him and write these songs together.
That feeling you describe is something that I sometimes feel eludes me now, and I don't know about you. I've chalked it up to kind of both age a little bit. Not I'm not an ageist in any way, but I do think you have formative experiences in your life, and particularly if you're a music fan, you see certain bands or artists, or you hear certain records at a certain time when you have the time to commit to them.
Yeah.
And then anything after that, it's really got to be mind-blowing, and potentially it might remind you of that feeling you had seeing someone else. It's a confusing, I don't know about you, like I'm in my late 30s now, and I'm at that age where I'm like, do I love this new thing, or do I love it because it reminds me of a thing that I already loved? Like, I get confused psychologically about how I'm processing culture. So when you say you're not moved as much, I've wrestled with that too. Like I sometimes wonder if that just means have I aged out of hip hop, that so much of it doesn't speak to me the way
I don't know. I
know what I mean?
But I genuinely do believe that music can be a powerful tool to awaken people's hearts.
Yes.
And I think that is an important tool in terms of like thinking about climate change.
Yeah.
And so I just hope there's more and more of that we'll see in the future, because it's just so, I think it's just so important.
I agree. I would be remiss if I didn't call back to someone you mentioned a few moments ago, and that would be Flea. Are you friendly with Flea?
Oh, man. Well, just from these concerts.
Okay, because I was going to say there are people in my peer group who don't like Flea. You know, they don't really enjoy the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and but Flea, I often hear, like I was talking to Will Oldham once, and he told me that one of the reasons Will famously got to do a duet with Johnny Cash on one of his records, where Johnny Cash was covering "I See a Darkness" by Bonnie Prince Billy. So Will, what my understanding, if I remember this correctly, is it was just the result of Rick Rubin and Flea just talking about music they loved and records they thought Johnny could cover. And then Will's name came up, and then they contacted him, and then they asked him to come to the session just to help guide the production. I don't think the intention was for him to sing. This is my I'm supposed to talk to Will soon, so maybe I'll get a clarification on this. But in any case, and then when I know that Flea can be a bit tight with some of our mutual friends in the Fugazi camp, and it just makes me wonder about Flea. There must be more to Flea.
Well, I'll say one thing about Flea, if you're curious. He blew my mind at the Paris concerts. His heart is so huge. If you're curious, you should watch on the Pathway to Paris Vimeo station. There's a video of what Flea and Warren did together, and the end of him sharing his love for the world. It's just so moving, and what he had to say, like we did a press conference, and what he had to say was just so beautiful.
Okay.
I really think he's a beautiful person.
Well, that's nice to hear. See, I don't know. I've never met Flea. I've never encountered Flea. I don't know any. Once he retweeted something I posted about a Discord thing. I remember that. That's my only interaction with Flea.
I think he really cares about people and the planet.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. Well, what's coming up next for you and Saltland? I want to go from Flea back to you, Becky. What's happening with Saltland?
Saltland is just doing some shows. Esmerine's going to go on tour in a couple of weeks in Europe, and so Saltland's going to open for Esmerine for some of those shows in Europe. So I'm looking forward to that.
Seems like a conflict of interest to me, Becky.
It is, definitely, but it also is it's getting some things done at the same time, which is helpful.
Okay, good. I know
if I can go to Europe once instead of twice.
Yeah,
that's helpful.
No, that's great. That's awesome. Actually, wasn't Bruce from Esmerine playing with you in Saltland when you were in Guelph?
Yeah, we just did a show together at the Kazoo Festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that.
No problem.
That seems particularly embarrassing as we're speaking now. But I wanted to go, and I double booked myself. And you played like you were playing at like lunch, weren't you?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I kind of got. Anyway, I really felt badly about that. Badly enough that I texted you to say I'm sorry I missed it. I hope you.
You are hilarious.
I hope you acknowledge my text. Anyway, okay. So you've got some dates coming up. Where can people learn more about Saltland?
Maybe on the Constellation site.
Right, cstrecords.com.
Yeah.
That's
/Saltland.
very specific, yes, and they can learn more about this beautiful record, A Common Truth, and all your tour dates and your past records as well. So cstrecords.com. Becky, is there a song from this record that we can go out on that you can pick?
Oh, sure. Well, how about I Only Wish This For You?
Okay, why did that come to mind?
Dedicated to your beautiful kid.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I hope there's a warm sentiment to this, unless the thing that you wish for them is being grounded. That would be bad. What is the sentiment behind
It's
that?
wishing a beautiful world for the next generation and the generation after that and the generation after that.
Okay, well that sounds lovely. This is I Only Wish This For You by Saltland. Rebecca Foon, thank you so much for being on this show, and it's nice to have you back, and it was lovely to talk to you, and best of luck with everything.
Yay, thank you so much. So wonderful talking to you.
Only Wish This For You by Saltland from the new record, A Common Truth. Thank you, Becky Foon, for being on this show. I felt better after talking to Becky, and I felt better listening just now. I hope you felt good after listening to Becky. She has a very reasoned and interesting perspective on the world, and I appreciate the fact that she's been on the show a couple times. So thank you once again, Becky. Again, cstrecords.com for more information about Saltland. This is the 314th episode of the Creative Control podcast, which is available on all podcast platforms. So wherever you listen to podcasts, look for Creative Control. And if it's not there, maybe ask someone to put it on there. Maybe me. I don't know. Go to vishkhanna.com for more information about contacting me and the show. Also go to patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to the podcast version of the program. There's also a radio show version of Creative Control that airs every Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time on CFRU.ca around the world. Or if you're in the area, CFRU 93.3 FM in Guelph, 250 watts of community power. Also, follow us on things like Twitter, @VishCreative. Also, we're on Facebook. Like the page on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, @VishKhanna. And please get in touch if you have to. Hey, this episode would not be possible without our sponsors. The finest pizzeria in Guelph, Pizza Trocadero, whom you can call for pickup or delivery at 519-829-2444. Or check them out at trocaderoguelph.ca. They just introduced a margarita. It's very good. I like it. Thin crust. Nice. Also, The Bookshelf, an independently owned bookstore and restaurant located at 41 Quebec Street in Guelph. Learn more about them at bookshelf.ca. And for the finest coffee anywhere, try Planet Bean freshly roasted, fair trade, certified organic coffee. Visit planetbeancoffee.com to find out if you can get their beans in your town. I don't know if you heard the announcement at the top of the show. I hope you did. On May 3rd, having a little launch party for the TV version, the actual filmed version of Long Night with Vish Khanna, which is launching on 5TV1 on May 3rd. So please come out to Longboat Hall, 1087 Queen Street West in Toronto on Wednesday, May 3rd, between 6 and 8 p.m. And there'll be more information about this and how to register for tickets. Just to RSVP on the Facebook page. On the Facebook page for sure, and it'll probably be on my website at vishkhanna.com as well. All right, lots of great episodes still to come. So thanks for checking in and listening to this podcast again. Please subscribe to the show, download episodes, rate, review them, follow the show, tell your friends about the show. It all helps, and I appreciate your support for the show. Okay, thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.